For patients with HER2-positive metastatic breast cancer, we already have several treatments available, including chemotherapy and HER2-blocking drugs like trastuzumab, pertuzumab, and T-DM1. But eventually, cancers become resistant to these drugs, and we need new options. One option that looks quite promising is a new drug called trastuzumab deruxtecan, or DS-8201. And this is what's called an antibody-drug conjugate, a relatively new kind of drug. And basically what it consists of is a monoclonal antibody, which is a synthetic protein that's very specific for one thing, in this case HER2, which is on the surface of HER2-positive cancer cells. And the antibody is linked to a very potent type of chemotherapy. So the way this works is that you inject the drug into a patient's bloodstream. The antibody portion goes through the blood and finds and attaches to all the HER2-positive breast cancers. And at the same time, it's bringing with it this very potent chemotherapy. So what this drug is able to do is specifically deliver high concentrations of a very potent chemotherapy directly to a cancer cell. It's kind of like a guided missile in the way it works. And because the chemotherapy is attached to the antibody, it's less able to damage normal tissues. And so what we've seen in a clinical trial that was just presented at the end of 2019 was that this drug in patients whose cancers had already been proven resistant to standard therapies, this drug seemed to work quite well in that it shrank tumors substantially in about 60% of patients, and it kept the patient's cancer from progressing for substantially over a year. So this looks quite promising. The drug does have some side effects, including mild nausea, vomiting, and fatigue. It also has a less common side effect that can be serious, which is inflammation of the lungs. So this is something that has to be monitored. But this drug does look quite promising, even when other drugs have failed. Trastuzumab deruxtecan is a new drug that was designed to target HER2-positive breast cancer and kill HER2-positive breast cancer cells, even when other drugs have stopped working. It's been recently shown in a clinical trial that this drug actually seems to be quite effective in cancers that have become resistant to standard therapies. But this was a relatively small trial, and we now need to prove that trastuzumab deruxtecan is superior to the currently available drugs. So there's now 2 large randomized trials that are enrolling that are designed to do just that, to show that this drug is better than the currently available drugs. So one trial is looking at patients whose cancer has already progressed on a standard drug called T-DM1, and in that trial patients are being randomized to either this new drug, trastuzumab deruxtecan, or a standard combination, a chemotherapy called capecitabine with either trastuzumab or lapatinib, both other standard HER2-directed drugs. So that's one trial. The other trial is looking at patients who haven't had T-DM1 yet, and in that trial patients are being randomized to either this new drug, trastuzumab deruxtecan, or the standard T-DM1 to try to determine which of those 2 drugs is superior. So I think right now we have 2 interesting options for clinical trials to try to figure out where trastuzumab deruxtecan should be used in the treatment of HER2-positive breast cancer.